Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Sharon Auld, and my talk today is on depression, the invisible pain. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it's not there. Life with depression can be isolating. As depression can't be seen, it's often hard for others to know what it's like to live with such pain and distress. Common misconceptions include the way a person looks reflects how they're feeling physically. Well, someone may look healthy, but that doesn't mean that they are. Another misconception is that invisible illnesses are all in a person's head. In other words, they are made up. Another misconception is resting up will make people feel better. Well, the same amount of rest leading up to different events on different days may not yield the same results, as symptoms ebb and flow, often unpredictably. Another misconception is if a person suffering from depression is enjoying themselves, they must be feeling okay. Well, don't assume that a person who's enjoying themselves, laughing, and participating in activities is symptom-free. Many people have learned to cope with their symptoms, to participate in important events and activities, but that does not mean that they are feeling well. Unlike having an ailment that's observable, when we experience depression, often our family, friends, and co-workers do not know what to do. In our society, there is a lack of social awareness about mental illness, coupled with a great deal of stigma and uncertainty. As a result, we often face skepticism. Others can accuse us of being lazy or moody and in need of cheering up, going out more, calming down, or a host of other glib judgments. I remember overhearing a conversation between a man and his wife. He was trying to be helpful in a practical way by suggesting that she lift her mood by going for a run. However, she just burst into tears. To complicate matters, like many long-lasting ailments, depression can ebb and flow in severity. Some days, weeks, and months go really well, and during others, it's difficult to work, socialize, and function, confusing those who can't see why one day is good and another a challenge. As a result, often our loved ones say to us, "But you were okay yesterday." They do not realize that mental health can fluctuate. So, while this makes explaining depression difficult, it is often necessary for us to disclose our pain and distress in order to gain assistance at work or home, proper medical care, support, and understanding. It can often feel difficult to know when to disclose specific information about our personal life, particularly experiences that may feel raw or painful to talk about. There's more to a person than just the physical. How to talk about invisible pain. As we live in a postmodern world where how things look is mistaken for how things are, a shortcut to help others understand the pain of depression right away is to compare it with a visible physical illness. This will help the people who lack an understanding of mental illness make the connection. For example, if you had a broken arm, everyone would understand that you need assistance to cook, clean, rest, and wash. However, if you have depression, there are many things you cannot do, yet others expect you will be able to do it anyway. Similarly, For those family, friends, and co-workers who cannot understand that depression also requires real medical treatment and often can't be addressed with a simple lifestyle change, the comparison to a physical condition or ailment can be useful. For example, you would not tell someone with cancer to fix it themselves. You would tell them to go to the doctor, take medication, and so on. It should be similar with depression. You should not assume people should fix this pain themselves. These basic explanations of the effects of depression will help others to understand to some degree, but this may only be the beginning. For friends and family, or even colleagues who are important to us in our lives, it might be more useful to explain depression on a more personal level. When we feel it is safe and appropriate to do so, we can get candid with the important people in our lives about our experiences, especially for those who don't have any first-hand knowledge of mental health. Hearing our story can be eye-opening. Having a personal connection with our experience can help the people who are important to us become more empathetic to our needs on good days and on bad. We can also consider providing additional literature and reading material for family, friends, and co-workers. They can get familiar with the symptoms and treatment process for depression while seeing it's definitely a legitimate condition that affects millions around the world. Some of the invisible symptoms of depression can include, firstly, continuous low mood such as sadness, guilt, pessimism, worthlessness, and helplessness. Next, crying far more than usual. Also, negative feelings towards ourselves and sometimes others. Reduced motivation to participate in activities or difficulty doing much at all. A loss of interest and enjoyment in life, even in things that we usually love. A sense of irritability. We can also socially withdraw. There can be an increase in anxiety and or panic attacks. We may have suicidal thoughts or intentions and a general sense that life is just not worth living. Our self-esteem may suffer and we may self-harm. Other symptoms of depression include we may start sleeping more than usual, or sleeping less, or our sleep may be disturbed. In terms of contradictions, we can have a higher appetite or also a lower appetite. We have or may experience a lack of energy and unexplained fatigue. Our thinking may become fuzzy and we may have difficulty remembering things. Our concentration may be poor and our coordination may go out the window. We can have a lack of libido. Depression can also exacerbate pre-existing pain. And we may have a general heavy feeling that causes us to move or speak less quickly than normal. We can also point our loved ones in the direction of more intimate or personal stories about depression in the form of poems, biographies, fiction, movies, and plays that help illustrate the experience. This is especially helpful if sharing our own mental health journey feels too overwhelming for us. Explaining our very personal, invisible pain and distress on a deeper level can be a challenge. It's not easy and it takes a certain amount of courage. Often it makes us feel like a failure or a burden to our partner, children, and co-workers if we have to constantly explain that we are suffering and still suffering. How to support others with invisible illnesses. If you know someone with depression, there are several things you can do to support them. It's important to remember everyone wants to enjoy life and no one wants to be a burden. However, people suffering from depression do appreciate your support and understanding. The first thing that you can do is to accept that you are powerless to make them better. Your love and understanding is what they need. Next, take time to talk to them and learn about their illness. Ask questions about symptoms and treatment, and most of all, be patient. The more you learn, the better you'll be able to understand and show empathy. Next, be with them when they need it and give them space when they want it. Many chronic illnesses become socially isolating. As people are housebound or lose companions due to the lack of understanding around invisible illnesses, being around and accessible may be one of the best support methods available. Lastly, try not to get frustrated. One of the biggest challenges associated with invisible illnesses is that you get sick and then you continue to get sick. The cycle does not stop. At times, this may get frustrating to caregivers, and it's important for them to realize it's normal for people suffering this way to be emotionally needy, distant, angry, or sad. Some well-known people with depression. It's important to realize that depression is indiscriminate and can affect anyone from any background. Celebrities who have suffered depression include Dwayne Johnson, Princess Diana, Katy Perry, Angelina Jolie, Lady Gaga, Janet Jackson, Marilyn Monroe, and J.K. Rowling. The future of invisible pain. As we move towards reducing the stigma of invisible illnesses like depression, conversations like the one we are having today will become easier and hopefully unnecessary one day in the future. Getting there starts with doing the hard work of educating those around us by sharing our own personal stories. By talking and sharing about our invisible pain, we can allow people to better understand what we are going through. By sharing our stories, we can help overcome some of the stigma that exists in society. By expressing what the reality of life is like with a mental illness, people will be able to see beyond the stereotype. Sharing will help other people to feel safe enough to speak out and seek help for themselves. All of us with invisible illnesses need to band together to make these illnesses seen and be taken seriously. If all of us stand together, we can make the invisible visible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I'm going to now show a recording Laurie Baressa, who is part of SEDEC with us and also solo survivors of loved ones of suicide, has spent time interviewing both Happy and Sylvia, who she will introduce you to on the videos. Part of making, as Sharon was saying, the invisible visible with people sharing their stories, it's really not an easy thing. So we really appreciate this upcoming segment as well. So I'm going to share screen myself again, show you this recorded interviews, and then we'll come back.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to introduce Happy to you. Today, she's going to talk to us about depression. Happy is a beautiful, communicative, and kind-hearted person. At a young age, she had her first depressive episode. She has suffered constant trauma since then. She fought many battles to overcome this illness through her young life. Today, she is living proof that the right mixture of love, support, management, and understanding of this condition can lead to a life full of purpose. Welcome, Happy, to our webinar today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to ask you, I'm going to start with some questions and then we can just take it from there. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's good.
And a big thank you for being so courageous and coming in, but you are going to make such a difference to so many people.
Well,
okay, my first question to you is, how old were you when you first started feeling depressed?
I can remember 6 years old. Yeah, that's the first memory.
Wow. And what were the feelings you felt then? Do you remember?
Yep. Lots of sadness and always crying for no reason. Just like very, very sad and crying every single day. Feeling very empty and just confused about why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling.
I'm sure. And at what age were you actually diagnosed with depression?
16. I was 16 years old.
Cool.
It was after attempting suicide the second time, and the hospital realized that there was a problem there. So they're the one that suggested that I get help.
Wow, that's incredible. So for 10 years, you didn't actually know what was going on with you.
Yeah.
Goodness me. And what treatment were you put on, or what did they suggest you do?
They told me to go to a psychiatrist, and he gave me antidepressants, and then he suggested I see a psychologist.
My next question to you is, how did you feel about the treatments and how did they work for you?
I was not happy. I just made it worse because I thought, oh, okay, another thing I'm not good at. Now I have to live off this for the rest of my life. And no, that didn't work for me. It didn't work.
And I'm going to jump because you mentioned that you actually attempted suicide twice. And how did you overcome those 2 episodes where you actually attempted suicide twice, which is a huge thing for a young person? Lots of pain.
It was within a week. So I attempted the first time, woke up in ICU, not happy. A week later, attempted again, woke up in ICU, not happy. And that's when the hospital realized that there is a problem here because in such a short time, I'm trying to do this. So they had to intervene.
Okay, and did the intervention then help you?
No, it didn't.
It didn't help you at all?
No, it didn't, because after that, after they gave me the instructions, it was to me to do something, and my family wasn't supportive, and I wasn't going to go through with the plan because I wasn't agreeing with it. I just wanted to end my life, so it didn't work out because they didn't have follow through, and they didn't have anybody like contacting me afterwards to like say, are you going through the stations? Are you doing this? So it didn't work, and it just made things worse. Yeah.
Oh my God. And tell me, and so what did you actually do for you to change this whole feeling? And how did it work for you afterwards? Was it with medication? I know it's been a journey, and I do remember you talking to us at that suicide presentation we had, and it resonated with so many people. So just explain to us what you actually did to come out of it and what you're doing now.
Wow. I think that after so many years of being on different medication and not really understanding what's going on, I think I eventually realized, okay, I can't die, I can't live. Let me try and figure out what this is about. So I started going to libraries, trying to learn about my body, my mind, and I just started really self-educating myself on what I'm going through. And just learning management techniques, breathing techniques, started writing, keeping journals on triggers and what it is that makes me get to that point. But it was difficult, and I was also still on medication at that point. But it wasn't like one thing; it was a gradual, long-term process where I was literally just determined to get to the other side. You know, it was my determination of there has to be another side to this. It can't just be this. Yeah.
That is incredible. Yeah. Because as you know, it is very difficult to get out of a depressive state. It is just, it really takes a lot of guts and courage and willpower and discipline and the right medication and the support. So did you get the support you needed? Oh, goodness.
No, I didn't, because nobody understood what was going on. It was always like, oh, Happy, you know, she can't do anything. She's always, you know, disappearing. So I literally had to think about what I wanted in my life, because I wasn't getting any support from anybody, you know. I had to really dig deep, you know, and also I stopped trying to explain to people what I'm going through and what I'm feeling like. And I actually went to a point where, like, I don't care anymore. I will find a solution. That was I was like, I will find a solution. Yeah, that was what I kept telling myself. Yeah,
and it worked for you. So that's fantastic. Now, how are you now, and what would you like people to know about depression and especially the stigma that is still attached to mental illness?
Well, right now I am still managing. I'm not on medication, which is something I never thought would ever happen. But it is a daily management, monitoring thing. And the stigma is it's destructive. You know, the way people see people that are depressed is very destructive. And I just want to say that just try, you know, like, even if you don't know, invite someone for a cup of coffee. You know, if someone disappears for a while and you haven't heard from them for a while, not for a cup of coffee, have a cup of coffee. You don't have to ask questions, just being there, you know. And that's the same thing I always say is just be there. You don't have to understand, and don't label something you don't understand, you know. It's difficult. It is really difficult. You can't see it physically because it's internal, but it's hard, and it helps though having one person or two people that will say, hey, I haven't heard from you. Would you like to have a coffee? Or can I come over and watch TV with you, or whatever? It does a lot. It means a lot, because then you do have, it goes against your voices in your head that says nobody cares, nobody understands. And then when you see someone trying, then it's like, oh, okay, well, there's a bit of hope. Yeah.
Wow, Happy. And you've got a lovely name. So I want to thank you, because you've just done is really given some a great input, and also for sure you've helped people. And as I said before, I've heard you speak, and just your story and what you've gone through has been an incredible lesson to many people. So thank you so much for coming and speaking to us today. And take care and be safe.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. A big welcome to Sylvia. Sylvia assists me in running the Solos group and is an exceptional friend, and she has agreed to be on the webinar today. Sylvia has a deep understanding of mental health issues and illnesses. Having done courses in psychiatry and working as a nursing sister for many years, both in the psychiatric wards and ICU. Sylvia has an incredible zest for life, and those that know her are amazed at her abundance of energy, her generosity towards others, her love for plants and animals, and her authenticity. Sylvia also understands depression, having suffered from this condition for many years. So welcome, Sylvia, to our presentation today, and thank you for agreeing to share some of your insights regarding depression.
Hi, Laurie. Thanks very, very much, and for that very kind words that you've said for my introduction. Very nice to be here with you today, as always. Thanks, Laurie.
Thank you. So I'm going to go straight into the questions and the topics and ask you what it feels like to be in that dark hole and how do you come out of it?
Laurie, it's sometimes difficult to describe that deep, dark kind of hole. It's a space, it's a void, which, I don't know, there feels like there's no light, there's no sides to it. It's just a black pit of hurt and pain and loneliness. It's your feelings are ambivalent. You're just not connected with yourself or with anybody else during that deep depression. It's just an overwhelming, sore, sad place.
I'm sure. So does the this quote resonate with you? When depression hits me, I get this feeling that I want to be far away and alone. But when I find myself alone, I feel completely lost. Do you resonate with that?
Absolutely, Laurie, because the difficulty with depression in the state is that because you're feeling so detached in a way from people, because you're half aware that your antisocial behavior, this crying, the sadness is not what people need around them. And along with that, people are trying to tell you how to behave or get yourself together. And these kind of suggestions are almost absurd and unrealistic because I don't think they understand or even have an educated or have lack educating themselves about these things. So their lack of knowledge and sometimes just pressurizing, and along with that depression, certainly for me, was anxiety and stress leading to panic attacks. So the more people would try and engage on an unrealistic thing, that pushes one further into this withdrawn state, because it's the only place you can feel where your integrity feels kind of like safe. But at the same time, Laurie, certainly, if I could sort of like try and describe it, it's like you're wanting to be with people and you're wanting that help, but at the same time, because you're needing that company, and it's a different kind of loneliness. It's not loneliness, but you feel so alone, and but you don't know where else to be safe but to be alone. So it's a kind of a contradiction of terms. So in while trying to self-preserve, keep your own integrity, because it feels constantly threatened on different levels. You push people away at the same time, Laurie. So it's almost like contradiction of emotions and terms, and it's allows you. That's what partly makes that whole horrible space.
I'm sure. Right. And Sylvia, do you recognize the triggers that could actually make you relapse again? And if you do, how do you manage them?
Certainly. I certainly find that if I don't, first thing certainly for me is if I don't get enough sleep. Right. If I'm not eating properly, so certainly fatigue puts me mentally feeling a bit more stressed. Certainly putting myself in certain situations where I know I'm going to be uncomfortable without being prepared. Certainly certain kind of memories also kind of like trigger me. So I think it's different for different people, but I find that not eating well, self-care. So while sometimes when you're depressed, it's like the hardest thing to do is look after yourself, and that sounds absurd, but you become disinterested in everything, in life, in yourself, and it's not because you're lazy to get up or do things, you don't see the point.
Yeah.
So, but I'm saying that if you work with the basics of sleep and that, and certainly I've maintained with my medication. I know some people don't, but I'm on a very low kind of a maintenance dose. So I find that it keeps me stable enough. It's anti-anxiolytic. It keeps down the anxiety levels so I can manage to deal with them better. And also very mild and very low dose of sedation, which makes sure that I get enough sleep. So certainly doing those things, attending to those primary things of triggers, as well as I think it's also taking time out to do enough physical exercise, because that's one way of getting rid of all this energy that you have, which becomes displaced or becomes almost like an implosion, that you feel that you're kind of breaking in. Never mind breaking out sometimes in like anger, mainly because people don't seem to understand or don't take the time to learn about mental illness to treat it adequately.
Yeah.
And so I think it's also like doing relaxation things. I take time to meditate. I take time out for myself. I do some reading. I keep myself mentally busy. And it's also like cognitive type therapy that I do with myself, like reframing things to say whether there's true, false, or you just don't know. Because a lot of what you think is real is not necessarily so.
Absolutely.
So that's more things that I do in physical, mental side that I do to keep myself.
Well, I think those are very important tips that you're giving to others as well. So, and how are you managing now? And what would you say to someone who has a loved one or a friend who has depression? How can they support them?
Well, Laurie, right now, I think on an average, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty well. I do have times, I think that's pretty much probably like everybody else that gets down. It's been a very difficult year for many people. And certainly I have been, on an average, better than I imagined. I lost my mom and I lost a friend to suicide. And so all of that and past things, sort of seems to have culminated, especially because there's been a lot of time being alone with this COVID thing.
COVID, yes.
But certainly I've kept myself busy on many levels, which, to be productive and keep my mind engaged, etc. Writing, reading, and as I said to you, meditation, and whatever have you. But certainly to anybody who has somebody who has a mental illness, to whatever degree that might be, is take personally time out just to listen to what they might have to say. To support them by first learning what is happening. I think certainly somebody who has an understanding from an education, just read a bit or ask somebody, and support from family, friends, or whatever have you. And also, sometimes it's just really about listening and being open to be there. Sometimes it's very difficult. The hardest, it is not easy. Certainly, I lost my partner, and partly, and I think due to the fact that I didn't understand what one was going through at the time. And it is not easy to live with somebody who has a mental illness, but certainly they themselves getting support from psychiatrists, psychologists, from SADAG, South African Mental and Anxiety Group, to be informed, to get pamphlets, to get their loved ones some brochure, something to read about, and to maybe help get them in contact with support groups. Certainly all these things. Support is huge. And certainly, as I say, being a loved one is not easy if somebody is not well. You know what I'm saying? Because it's all right to see somebody with a broken arm and make them comfortable with a pillow under the arm and raise their hand so their hand doesn't swell. But how do you do that with a broken mind, Laurie?
It's very difficult,
Not easy, but
I think it's very important because it's depression is just like the weather. If it's raining, it's raining. If it's the hurricane, it's a hurricane. So it just won't go away. And if we can all understand that, I think we're going to take a big step towards really removing the stigma that mental illness has.
Oh, huge.
And I'd like to thank you for just sharing this morning with us, and know that you are supported and we're always there for you. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you very much, Laurie, and much appreciated for all your love and support, and for SADAG as well, for their care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, Laurie. Bye.
Hi, welcome back, everyone. And thanks to Laurie and to Happy and to Sylvia for kind of very bravely taking this conversation further and more personally as well. Sharon, I'm going to go back to you now.
Okay, and maybe I'll start off with just a little comment that I'd like to make about the videos that we watched. I thought that, yes, of course, it was incredibly brave for both Happy and Sylvia to speak about their depression. But wasn't it interesting also to hear what impact society and especially loved ones' thoughts about depression had upon them? I mean, Happy in particular spoke about having to fight against stereotypes, and ultimately what sort of has made her triumph and be a survivor is finding her own narrative, finding her own story, and superimposing that over society's view of depression and mental health. So yeah, both Happy and Sylvia have to be commended for finding their own story and starting to educate their loved ones about that.
Thanks so much, Sharon, and thanks everyone for joining us today. If anyone does have any more questions, and I have put my email address on the chat, but it's kznsadak@anxiety.co.za, so you're welcome to come back to me, and I can also put you in touch with Sharon if there are any unanswered questions. But a big, huge thanks to you, Sharon. I think it really does make an important difference to start talking about the invisible pain, and what we're trying to do always at STADAG is to try and make it more visible and show there is support, share the education on our website, share the helpline number so people can phone a counsellor and not feel alone, even if it's in the middle of the night. So really also to huge, enormous thanks to Happy and Sylvia, because it's not easy to share. And they did that so bravely. And thanks everyone for your comments and your sharing on the chat as well and in this forum. And yeah, please keep in touch with us in SADAG over the holidays. The helplines are always open, so we are available. And thanks for joining us this afternoon.